And I loved the way the creative started to change back in 95. And I wonder how much of that is your influence. We started to see more reality based stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and as a reminder, some of the angles from 95, we've got Bam Bam Bigelow shoving the guest of honor, Lawrence Taylor. The announcers are handling it more like it was a shoot rather than
Sure.
a over the top wrestling thing. And
Yeah.
we even saw a 1, 2, 3 kid seizure angle. In the back half of the year, we're going to get stuff like the Shawn Michaels collapse. So there's lots of really cool reality based stuff here.
Right.
And we're also seeing some silliness that year where maybe Vince is trying to find what the new normal is in a post Hulk Hogan WWF era, because we've got Jerry Lawler being shown covering his feet in horse poop for weeks. We've got the arrival of Glenn Jacobs as Dr. Isaac Yankum DDS. We've
God.
got Carl Ouellet wanting to use his legitimate backstory of his glass eye as a new character where he's turned into an evil pirate. I mean, this is some kind of silly stuff that's happening here.
Yeah.
Was this all Vince, or who was an advocate for some of the over the top campy stuff, and who was pushing for more realism?
Well, I was pushing for more realism, as you can imagine. Patterson, when he got in that creative mode, the realistic mode, was as good as anybody has ever been, because that's how they booked in San Francisco. He was in San Francisco 12 or 13 years, I think. So, he was, when he got in that mood, if he was in the mood to write serious, Patterson was the best. Brucey always had uh, you know, uh, could have a silly side, but that was just his sense of humor coming out. Uh, and and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. The good thing about it is that if, but it's all going to be Vince's call. So I, I I I don't know how to explain it any better than that. Bruce contributed a lot to the funny stuff and
Okay.
the over the top stuff, and he was good at it. That was his. He was inclined to think that way, and he liked laughing and he liked bullshitting and stuff, and he's fun to work with. Patterson, if he came in and he was hit with that feeling, he could adapt. If he was hit with a serious feeling, or JR's got an idea for a angle, and it's pretty violent or it's pretty aggressive, then if his mind got set in that, then he was amazing. So it creative is a funny thing, man. It's really a funny thing. The easiest way to do creative is to do long term planning. I'm sure that Tony Khan has got uh, uh, pay per views blotted out, marked out, because you got to get to someplace. He's in this case, aside from this Sunday, Tony's got to get back to Wembley, and you can't get back to Wembley if you don't have if you know the destination. Then it's up to you to create the route that you want to take to get to that destination. And that's how I've always looked at it. Longer term planning makes it easier on the creative team, and it makes it, uh, just a much simpler, organized process. So that's kind of how I look at that deal. Now, to the contrary, Vince, like I said before, he'll change in a heartbeat. He'll change after a night's sleep while you're on your way to the town. When we were doing TVs basically in the Northeast, that happened a lot because we didn't travel that far, so we could either get a real easy flight and fly in that night, or we would when we got there, we'd have messages because we didn't have cell phones at that point. We'd have messages left at the front desk to call Vince, call VKM. And sometimes he'd just leave it for me, or sometimes he might just leave it for Bruce. Bruce seemed to be always included because he did a lot of the grunt work, in all honesty. So I I like the system that both companies, big companies, have now. Seem to work for both of them. And I've seen Tony Khan's book, the one that you have from Dusty.
Yeah.
I've seen his version of that to some degree, and I was very impressed with how organized he was. it might seem like he's not organized, but he's willing to listen to any of the, when the talent gets to TV and they get the rundown and they find out what they're doing, that's when the lobbying starts. It's like Washington, D.C. Everybody's got an angle, and it generally involves them, of which I applaud, because if they're invested, man, they're going to bust their balls to make sure it works.
Let's talk a little bit about house shows. Who was booking house shows in 95? Would that have been something you handled as far as the matchups and what you were going to be promoting on the house shows, or who was handling that here?
How was JJ's tenure there? Was he there in 95?
He was. He leaves in 96.
Yeah, JJ did a lot in my early days there, and I learned a lot from JJ. I had two really good role models in the booking, live event booking world, and Cowboy Bill, and then of course, he had his guys, Ernie and Mantell, and he kept them as long as they stayed fairly hot, or we were still drawing or making a little bit of money. But then when they cooled down, he had no issues. And I don't sound like he killed them. He stabbed them in the heart. It's just that when you lose your edge and you're not writing hit songs anymore, it's easy to, to make some changes and try to get some fresh blood in there. Cowboy was a lot like Pat Patterson in the standpoint that when Pat got motivated, when Pat heard that lyric walking into the meeting room, figuratively, he got that song in his head that he kept singing all day. And for a guy like me who liked the more serious stuff, and to my fault, then he was the greatest, because now he's back to writing weekly TV for Roy Shire in San Francisco, and a lot of that involved violence and blood and dramatic elements, and but they all had a personal issue, and I would say Pat made sure that the title stayed valued, and a lot of times we overlook that. We give it too much credit. Titles sometimes, if the talent's not over, and their issue with whomever the challenger is, isn't logical, and it's going to be a hell of a performance, then why do it?
Let's talk about 1995 creatively. I mean, Kevin Nash he's going to morph into this smiling babyface Diesel as the WWF champion and the lead babyface. Do you remember there being a moment where everyone sort of understood that this direction wasn't clicking? I mean, I think Diesel really worked as a heel. I don't know how well it worked as a babyface, especially when we started to refer to him as Kevin Nash and not Diesel. I know that Bruce didn't really like that and thought it made him quote unquote regular. He felt like a regular person, not this larger than life superhero. And make no mistake, Kevin Nash, one hell of an athlete, a D1 collegiate scholarship basketball athlete. But respectfully, it's not like his basketball career led to a Hall of Fame NBA career. And I know that Bruce felt like highlighting someone's collegiate background, if they didn't go on to overwhelming success as a professional, made them feel more like a regular person and less like a superhero. That's Bruce's perspective. What did you think about a smiling babyface Diesel and acknowledging him as Kevin Nash with his amateur status?
I think we dropped the ball booking him at times. I was not against whatsoever Kevin Nash becoming a champion. He had look, he was articulate, he was well spoken, he was athletic enough to get by with about a match with about anybody. I mean, I've seen him have great matches with arguably one of the greatest workers of all time, and Bret Hart. His matches, he didn't have any real stinkers. But you got to understand that he wasn't at the level of a worker, Pat Patterson, or somebody like that. He wasn't a natural at it. He didn't grow up a Major League Wrestling fan. He just, but I applaud that. I thought it was a good. I thought it was it risky? Man, maybe. As it worked out, it seemed to be. But I thought it was sure as hell worth the give it a shot, because you got nobody else that looks like him Vince is on that, was still on that, and he probably still is today. How many heads do you turn in the airport? So that kind of answers a lot of questions. He said, well, what about Shawn? He's 6 feet tall. Yeah, but you're talking about Shawn Michaels. You're not talking about a good average to good wrestler. Like, you could think of a lot of examples that on their day they are awesome, but they have more off days than on days. It seems to me like. But Kevin had that look, and he turned heads, and a good-looking guy. He could chat up anybody, so he was a good communicator. And I thought it was. I applaud the chance at it. Let's travel this road and see what we get, and that's what we did.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Sergio. I'm from Lancaster in California. The motivation behind just following through with this refinance was I have a baby on the way. So just wanted to get everything in order. In the past couple of years, just afraid to pull the trigger, but then it just seemed like the right time to do it. I went to multiple banks, not only the mortgage I had, but then I went to you, and then I also went to several others. And it just seemed like your team, they were just completely honest and outright. Also, all the information was just laid out for me right there and then, answering all my questions in a timely, efficient manner. Diane was just so helpful and above and beyond accessible with both texting and emails and just any information that they needed. She would explain to me what exactly they wanted me to send, and then if there were any issues, she was able to just resolve them pretty quickly versus other companies that sometimes it would take a couple of days to get some information. We were looking to pay down some debt, also looking into making some improvements to the home, also build up our backyard, do everything, especially for our daughter coming. By doing this cash out, it's a good amount that we're saving, between $1,000 and $1,500 a month, I would say. It helped out tremendously as well. My name's Sergio. I'm from Lancaster, California, and I saved over $1,500 a month with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.